And we are live once again with the Think Fitness Life podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Matt Gluckman out of Salt Lake City. And then we have Eric Menchie over there in Boston. How you doing, Eric?
Not too bad yourself.
Oh, I'm great. It's sunny over here. Isn't there snow on the ground over there?
Still snowing cold.
That's what's good about being out here too. When the snow's on the ground, it's not that there's no moisture in the air. It doesn't freeze you to your bones, and just nice, enjoyable climate out here. Not to rub it in.
Oh, thanks.
All right, so today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about some fitness myths we hear a lot with our clients, or just people in the gym get certain questions a lot, and then we actually have an email we're going to answer from Will. I believe that was one of your items from your connections. Then we're going to go into open discussion and talk about all these myths, and then we'll we always end with like a little fun quote at the end, little closing statements. And next week we're going to be talking about what sort of drives our motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, and go over a lot of different quotes that we both like. So yeah, let's hop right into it. Little news for this week had to do with a study out of Southwestern Medical Center over in Utah, actually. Now, the article is about a month old, but I thought it was important because it talks about proper exercise can reverse damage from heart aging. So in the study, they're specifically talking about people who have been sedentary most of their life. And it goes into depth about saying if you are before age 65, it is not too late to start, because in that late middle age, your heart apparently retains a plasticity to it, and an ability to sort of remodel itself and strengthen itself. And the article does go into depth about how the regimen did include exercising 4 to 5 times a week for about 30 minutes at a time. And quite frankly, that's really all you need to do. 4 to 5 weeks, if you can get an hour in, that's awesome. Most people have a busy schedule, so you can get in for 30, 40 minutes, then you got to shower, get back to work. But yeah, it's never too late to start, people. Whether you are being down on yourself or you just feel like you tried to exercise and then you had to stop right away because you're just tired, and you don't think you'll ever get there, well, you're wrong, because you will eventually get there. You just have to power through it and get through those painful and hard conditioning days. And that's it for me. Did you have any news to talk about over there, Eric?
I did not have anything up to date with the news now, but that article is great. Just shows that, it's never really too late if you're young and still able, but it does show that if you keep pushing it off, that it can have detrimental effects.
Yeah, and I think I see a lot of people who are sort of defeated already, and they're mid 30s to mid 40s, and I do say, like, yeah, it's never too late. It's never too late, trying to motivate them, but at the same time, sometimes people use that as a crutch to stay complacent with where they are. So just don't let that be you. Don't give yourself excuses. Don't let yourself be complacent with what you have now if you are unhappy with it. So go out, strive for more, challenge yourself, grow. All right, let's get into some myths. Now, I love this topic, and I could talk about some of these topics for hours because I just see it so often. Like, it's funny how I've only been in this industry for 4 years, and the same questions pop up again and again and again. And I'm gonna let you dive into the first one, and the first two that I saw when I was asking around for people's thoughts on myths they'd want to hear discussed was weights make you bulky and lifting heavy makes you bulky.
Oh, the classics. People always ask me this all the time, especially women, and we'll dive into that later. But this whole, weights make you bulky thing is a complete myth. And yeah, you're going to put lean muscle mass on. Anytime you pick up a weight and you haven't previously, your body's going to adapt to it, grow muscle, decrease body fat mass. But what people start to feel is they see themselves almost growing in size. Yeah, the muscle fibers are going to gain size, but you're not getting bulky. Now, I think a lot of people get confused when people are like, "Oh, I'm bulking," or they're like, "Oh, I'm putting on a lot of weight." Well, you also have to look at your diet too when it comes to weightlifting. You can't just be like, "Oh, the weights are making me bulky." I mean, they could be if you're eating poor and fast food and junk food. You're not helping yourself out. But the whole point of weightlifting is to put lean muscle mass on, decrease body fat.
It's so easy to fall into a trap mentally. I look at everything in a perspective of respect to its history. And, bodybuilding became huge in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that was like the first mainstream introduction to exercise and formal gym routines. And the men coming out of there were just freaks of nature. Back in the day, steroids, these synthetic hormones, they were considered natural enhancements at the time. And when women got involved, you saw the transition. You saw how it was originally about just sort of like a toned, strong, muscular female. And then, that was Rachel McLish. And then later on, you got into, like, over the years, it was like bigger, stronger, faster. And the women were starting to take some of these synthetic hormones. And then that set the stage for newcomers coming into the world of fitness and health and looking good and the gym and, meal prepping and everything. And it got so apparent to people that if they wanted to look like that, they just got to go to the gym. And it's funny because, you can tell this information to somebody, and on one end, they'd be really happy to hear that. And on the other end, someone would be really sad. So, no, unfortunately, weights don't make you bulky. Talking to a guy and calming down a female, typically, you're saying, no, I promise weights aren't going to get you bulky. So it's kind of funny because it's like you're telling a woman, like, no, it's not that easy to get bulky. You have to really work hard and have a really strict diet and everything like that. And then you're also telling a guy the same thing, like, no, you're not just going to get bulky just by lifting heavy weights. You also have to be consistent, eat right, and make sure you're activating the muscle that you're trying to work. So yeah, I feel like bodybuilding, how it was sort of the spokesperson for the fitness industry and how it transcended through time, it sort of created this false belief of, or not false belief, that's not the word I'm looking for, but like a false perspective of what the gym can get you.
Oh, totally. And now, well, you see it on all these magazines, like you said, it's rampant everywhere. And I always laugh when people ask me this question. You just get it so many times, and people are so afraid of that. And you just got to tell them that that's just not how the body works. You can't look at this perspective of magazine covers and expect, oh, this is what's going to happen, or kind of the same thing where people are like, oh, I'm going to get shredded real fast. It's like that's a lot of work going into that stuff, and it's perceived as do A and B, you get C, but it's really not that equation and not that simple for a lot of people.
Yeah. I actually kind of like how you just kind of put it in an equation perspective, because it's like the weights are the stimulus that's put on the body, and if the goal is to get bulky, say that we're just going to make that the goal to get bulky, right? You need so much more in line to get to that bulky goal other than just the weights. So that's not the weights that are making you bulky, right? It's the consistency. It's the amount of calories you're consuming, the food selection you're consuming, and again, back to consistency. It's huge. Sort of the amount of tension you're going to put on your body week over week to stimulate its own growth and its own hormonal response. That's really the bigger part of the equation. It's not just the weights that make you the bulky. It's the eating, quite frankly, is what's going to make you bulky. Because I could lift super heavy, and if I'm at a caloric deficit, if I'm eating less calories than I'm burning for the week, then it's literally impossible for me to gain weight. But if I'm at a caloric surplus when I'm lifting heavy, odds are, especially given my background of bulking, my body's gotten more adapted to that, odds are I'm going to gain weight. So I feel like if you're going to replace something with blank makes you bulky, or lifting blank makes you heavy, or lifting heavy makes you bulky. I would say eating makes you bulky.
Totally. And you have to, I tell people it all goes by your kind of how your body responds to a stimulus. I've had young athletes that are like, oh, I want to gain muscle mass. And, they lift for 2 or 3 months. Yeah, they see slight increase, but their weight doesn't change. I'm like, well, what aren't you doing? And it's like, oh, I'm not eating enough. I was like, that's the biggest thing right there. If you want to put mass
Yeah,
on, you got to eat. Now, if you flip it and say, hey, someone's trying to lose weight, let's work out and lift. You can't be like, go eat whatever. They're still going to gain lean muscle mass, but you also want to flip that equation around so that they're making or creating lean muscle mass, but burning fat at the same time. So the equation is different for every single person. And that's why it's
absolutely.
just so funny when people ask that general question or say, I'm going to get bulky on this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm actually dealing with it right this second because I'm working with an Olympic athlete who she actually got a bronze medal, but which hats off to her. But she was so used to this different training style and this different diet. And now we want to work on leaning out and body composition changes to look good for a wedding. And the diets are just completely different. And the stuff we do in the gym isn't actually that much different than what she was doing previously. We're obviously not really worried about sports specific stuff or generating too much power, but we're still squatting, we're still deadlifting, we're still doing post activation potentiation type workouts and just overstimulating that muscle. And then it's just that next piece of, okay, now we've created the stimulus. Are we going to put a lot of carbohydrates and fuel into our system so that our body absorbs more nutrients? Or are we going to sort of let our body use a minimal amount that we put in, but also kind of use its fat storages for energy and repair?
Totally. And I think you kind of just hinted on the next big myth that's out there is you get a lot of women come to you and be like, oh, I've heard I'm not supposed to lift weights, or women shouldn't lift weights because they will make you bulky. um what are your kind of thoughts on that one?
I did actually hear that one too. Someone said, "Aren't women not supposed to lift weights?" I don't know where that came from. Honestly, I mean, it was probably just like a misogynistic guy who wanted to keep women powerless because there's no reason why a woman shouldn't lift weights. However, what is interesting is women respond a lot better to total body workouts than men. So it's like almost like their body is ready for full full body tension. I just find that piece interesting. I don't really have much other information that breaking that myth. I would just say that anybody who told me that a woman shouldn't lift weights is just a jerk.
Well, I think it goes a lot back to what you say is they see these like ripped, jacked up women, and they have to realize that there's a lot of behind the scenes, drugs that are involved in creating a female body to kind of morph into this ultra lean, muscle bound body that just genetically doesn't really happen for most women and won't happen because they just don't have the hormones that we do. And that's really all I have on that one is that one's complete BS and bogus. Is if you're a woman out there, go lift weights. That's how you're gonna burn a lot of amount of fat. You're gonna get you're gonna get
Yeah,
in shape. You're gonna feel good. Your metabolisms
you're
go
gonna
up.
be strong. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's also an important part to mention about the metabolism going up because when you are lifting heavy, right? Not only are you burning calories and eventually through a consistent routine, you're going to be losing some fat, but by targeting your lean muscle on your body or targeting your muscle on your body throughout the workouts, throughout the week, you're actually going to raise your metabolic rate. So at the way, if your goal is toning, definition, weight loss, whatever, look good, feel good, look good naked, all that stuff. Lifting heavy is going to be not only the best way to get to that goal, but the most beneficial way to get your body working for you and with you than doing cardio. Because when you do cardio, strictly just trying to burn calories and you're just trying to be on that treadmill like the hamster wheel until you lose that last 5 pounds of fat, lose that last 5 pounds of calories that you've been, or that last 5 pounds of belly fat you've been trying to get rid of. But when you do cardio, your body does this weird thing where it has a certain weight, like 145, say, right? And as you're doing cardio, you're burning calories, you're burning some water weight, and your body actually goes, hey, we're at 144.5, so metabolism, slow down back there. And it actually weakens your metabolism. So by working on your lean muscle mass and by lifting heavy, you're going to improve your metabolic rate and help yourself burn more calories as you progress through your life training regimen.
And that's what's going to keep you in shape over the years, time and time again, like our research has shown.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, is like, do you want to get to your goal like just right away, real quick, and just so you can have some pictures and remember it? Or do you want to get to your goal and have it be done and stay there and be sustainable?
Totally.
I think sticking with the women, because this was another one I got from one of my clients, and she goes, you know, are sport bras just to prevent pain and awkwardness? And I was like, I told her, I was like, I have no idea. I'd have to look it up. And sure enough, there's a Cooper's ligament, which is a connective tissue that actually keeps the breasts firm. What happens is when you do all these high impact activities, jogging, stair mill, elliptical, whatever, you put a lot of stress on that ligament, on that Cooper's ligament, which will cause the breast to sag more quickly. So yeah, there is actually a science behind the sports bra, and it's protecting those Cooper's ligaments to help maintain your appearance throughout life, longevity, throughout later in life.
That's an interesting one. I never heard that myth before.
Yeah, neither did I. I was so blown away by the question, and I didn't have an answer at the time.
And I would say, especially on the flip side, okay, yeah, you got to wear a sports bra, but what can we do to strengthen that ligament? So this kind of rolls back to our last myth. All right, if you're a woman that doesn't want to weight train, what's that ligament going to do? But if we weight train or even body weight resistance and put tension on that ligament, that's going to become stronger, firmer. And for all you females out there, uplift or higher lift, less sag. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you strengthen the ligaments kind of the same way you strengthen your chest by doing flies, presses, just different variations of hitting the chest can help strengthen the ligaments. But, and I have to talk to my boss again about this because he's worked over here for 15 years, so he's dealt with it. But if you have an implant, there is a specific way you're supposed to exercise your chest based on whether or not the implant is under the muscle or over the muscle. And I'm going to have to get more information on that, but it was really specific about one or the other, about how if it must be, you know what it is? If the implant is under the muscle, you can strengthen your pecs and there won't be a detrimental effect. But if it's on top of the muscle, you have to be careful with some of the chest presses that you do, because you can actually create a displacement where the implants start to drift to the sides. Because if you think about it, kind of like the strengthening of the muscle coming in through the middle and pushing out the implants a little bit further. So yeah, kind of interesting, whole different world and perspective I'm not used to training or thinking about. But yeah, there's definitely ways to strengthen your Cooper's ligaments. Sports bras aren't just useful or aren't just useless. They do have a use. And yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool myth.
I like that one.
Okay. We didn't answer Will's email, so we're going to have to do that. But Will, if you're listening, it was a great email. Congrats on the 405, and I look forward to giving you our answers, and I hope they help you. So tune in, or you can just skip to the end of the podcast, because I'm sure you're looking for those answers. But okay, so I got ab workouts target belly fat.
Bring it on.
True or false?
Is this one where people are like, oh, if you just do ab work, it's just going to isolate this belly fat and make me lose it, sort of reference?
Well, I wrote it down, but in what I was thinking was like I always hear it portrayed like this, where someone says, "Yeah," or you know, I'm chit chatting with somebody I may have just met, and I'm trying to figure out what their goals are, see if I can possibly give them a little tidbit of information, and they go, "Yeah, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight. I do some crunches here and there, and just this little bit of belly fat right here, but." You know, I'm doing crunches. I do planks. I do dumbbell side raises, and that's typically how it comes about. And then it's like, hey, by the way, you know, you can't target fat loss like that. But there's just so much that goes into this one. You know, first of all, you can't spot reduce is what it comes down to. You can't just pick an area that you have fat and decide that you're going to work out that one area and that's going to get rid of the fat. But what you can do is you can build up the muscle in a certain area, and now the next time um, fats or sugars are stored to that area, hopefully it'll be consumed by the muscle rather than um, stored in
Yeah,
fat
I
deposits.
like this one because you just hit it right there. Is people like, oh, I can spot reduce? It's like, no, you can't, but you can spot build because whatever muscles you utilize, your growth hormone and all those things are gonna stimulate that muscle to grow. So it's almost like in theory it would say yes, it should work, but it doesn't. And that's where for the abs, I tell people it's a metabolism thing. Like you have to train your full
Yeah.
system to expect to see results body wide for fat reduction. I mean, yeah, there's fat in the muscles for energy and stuff. You can utilize that stuff, but you should be utilizing it as a high demand. And you look at the other side of it is how's your nutrition? If your nutrition is shit, that fat's not going anywhere no matter how hard you work out. Goes back to that equation.
Yeah. Weights,
Yes.
consistency, eat, grow. No, I like how you said kind of like the energy systems, because that's really what it comes down to. Like people are always saying like abs are made in the kitchen, abs are made in the kitchen. Well, yes and no. Abs are made in the gym, and they can be prevented by the kitchen. Because, like you said, you're trying to get your body to use those last little bits of fat storages to burn for energy. And you're trying to then also get your body adapted in a way that it's not going to want to, well, it's not going to get the stimulus, more sugars, more fats, too many carbohydrates, and then again you're right back to where you started. You know, you burned all that fat for your workout, and then you're putting it right back on to your abdominals rather than letting sort of your body repair the muscle tissue and not put as much into it. So diet does play a role, but when it comes to burning fat in general, it's just energy systems. That's all it is. And like you said, getting your heart rate up, whatever you have to do, total body workouts to get your body burning and utilizing that energy. And then that's how you're going to burn
And
that belly
I
fat.
never I never tell people just because it's you can't spot reduce doesn't mean you don't work out that area. You can still do ab exercises. Now, would I advise you to go into the gym and do 30, 40 minutes of just abs because you're going to spot reduce fat there? No. But if you want to throw in abs pre workout or at the end of your routine, absolutely, because you can still train the muscle. But what I tell people is you want to get a full body stimulus, still hit almost every single muscle group you can for full body metabolic demand. And for a recovery standpoint, you can still train abs. It's just, I think people start overtraining certain areas like, oh, you know, I want to lose weight under my arms. Or then people just do that stuff over and over again and they'll see results at first and they stop because their body's not getting the stimulus that it needs, or like you said, energy system demands. And that's where I tell a lot of people, you're hitting the weights, throw in some metabolic work too. Get that. I
No,
was
that's
just
a
saying, get
really
that heart
good.
rate up and
Sorry,
keep
go
it up.
ahead.
So you're literally just working your heart.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Like you don't want to just focus on burning the fat away, but then you also want to build up that muscle because you're trying to, cut it off at the source as well as get rid of what's already there. And the best analogy I can come up with off the top of my head is just like if you spill a big thing of water on the counter and it's now coming off and leaking onto the floor, you could spend the whole time wiping off the water off the floor, right? And that's that fat that you're just that's been so stubborn on your abdominals, for example, and you're just trying to get rid of it, and you just keep wiping it away, But in the end, if you had just kind of cut off at the source at the counter, at the top of the counter, and you've been doing maybe both, then you're going to get rid of the water on the floor, aka the fat on your abdominals, and you're going to get rid of that fat coming in, or water coming in, getting on the floor or putting fat on your abdominals. So it's all one working piece, but burn that energy, challenge yourself metabolically, and target those muscles, and then also eat appropriately. And you're not only going to get rid of that fat, but you're going to help that muscle show and help target that lean muscle again,
and I
increasing
think that
your
analogy
metabolic
was
rate.
great. And what I kind of got out of it is like, okay, lifting's important, very important. I get that. But if you're trying to like lose weight and spot reduce, nutrition has to be like the number one priority that you have to square down and change if you want to see ultimate results.
Yeah, and unfortunately, nutrition is the most difficult thing because it's not as easy as just Googling the answer to all your needs, because everybody's body is different and everyone's body responds differently. And you have to be willing to be patient with yourself. But that's why I really like programs like the Whole30 diet. And I'm going to brag a little bit. Melissa Hartwig from the Whole30, she goes to my gym. But regardless, it's just such a great way to get you back to eating whole foods, get yourself out of the routine of eating processed things, get you out of the routine of drinking alcohol, out of the routine of all these added sugars and lectins and all these other things that you don't realize have detrimental effects on your system, and you don't realize it, but you get so caught up in the routine that they become we'll say sugar addiction, but they become habitual without you even taking the time to think
and
that's the right choice.
I tell people that's, like you just said, that's one of the best places to start is the Whole30.
Yeah, it's just such a good reset button. You spend 30 days, you eat all natural, clean foods, not processed stuff, basically nothing that causes inflammation in your system. And then you slowly reintroduce things after those 30 days so you can tell what is triggering you. I definitely went through it, and it was a really painful process. But I had ulcerative colitis, lost 30 pounds, and then had to spend the next couple months kind of figuring out everything nutritionally. And I was really fortunate to have Brandon at Equinox there, because he had ulcerative colitis, and that was such a big help to have somebody else who had gone through it and had pretty much overcome it and had it under control. So that was just such a great resource and really fast-tracked me to understanding my body, its immune system, and
if you haven't checked it out and listened to this, go check it out. But we we'll cover that in our nutrition episodes down the road. We kind of want to just circle back to our myths before we get off into a rabbit hole here. I know we can do it.
I do that a lot. I'm really good at that.
It's all Thanks good. For just want to keep it on track
for down to spit to ground. Yeah, no, my fault. I like going off on tangents sometimes. But okay, so I got one more.
I love it.
It was lifting weights makes an athlete tight.
Yeah, a lot of people,
go ahead.
You'll hear a lot of people say, oh, this athlete's going to get tight. They're not going to perform well. Biggest example is nowadays is the TB12 method and the whole pliability thing, and long muscles are yada, yada, yada. In reality, it's not true. You have to look at the sports and the sport demand of what an athlete needs to do. Now, if you're a track runner and you're on a pliability workout, you're not going to create power and force development enough to be fast. Would I recommend that for someone? No. Kind of disclaimer, it works for Tom Brady. He doesn't have a high demand of athletic movement. Okay? He's not a receiver. He's not a lineman. He doesn't need to push 300-pound people back. He throws the ball. But other athletes, that stiffness is good. They need to be able to cut, sprint, accelerate, decelerate on a dime. You need that. You need that in a muscle. A muscle's got to be a spring. And if it doesn't has that spring, they're not going far.
Yeah. So why do you think that that myth
I
came
think
about?
it's from like the old school coaches when they would be like, "Oh, heavy lifting is going to slow you down, or heavy lifting is going to put a lot of muscle mass on you. That's going to slow you down." Because you'll hear a lot of this is like swimming coaches will be like, "Oh, if they put on a lot of muscle mass, they're going to sink because muscle weighs more than fat." Okay, you tell me a pound of muscle doesn't weigh the same as a pound of fat? Okay. All right. We can argue that all day. And I get where they're coming from by buoyancy and stuff, but I think it's deeply rooted in just the old school thought of, are we going to slow someone down? Now, different methods of lifting, I got to word this quick, can slow someone down. Now, if you're a high end track athlete or sprinter and say your competition's coming up soon, you do not want to be doing slow eccentrics because your muscle's not going to be ready for your competition in say 2 weeks. You want to be training for your competition. So that's all that speed work and strength speed that they do and lifting. And periodization has just come such a far way that we can get into these crazy methods and really help these athletes out nowadays.
So basically, what you're talking about is people's like cadence or rhythm in a lift, and if you are lifting for performance, you want to be more explosive and you want to have more speed and care less about weight and time under tension.
Depending on what phase you are in, of course, if your sport is a jumping sport like basketball, everyone needs a base layer of strength. And base layer of strength is going to give you improvements in lean body mass, which is going to give you improvements in athletic performance. It's been proven time over time in studies.
You're going to take away from your game that next weekend or whatever. Gotcha.
Someone could lift heavy and still play well, perform well. But I think this whole tightness thing is your body's not actually getting tight from the weights. Your body gets tight and stiff from poor position of your body, poor position of the alignment of your bones, your hips, your spine. That's where tightness comes from.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I got too sidetracked by the word athlete in there. I see what you're saying. Just like lifting in general makes you tight. Right. That's an absolute myth. Right. You can feel tight immediately after your workout, but that's because you've just fired muscles. You've contracted muscles
but
for,
I think
60 minutes.
I think you can look at it both ways. Tight as in, this muscle fiber is going to respond different to a stimulus. Yes. Or am I going to feel stiff and not be flexible for my event? I think in that one, we just kind of broke down 2 ways people look at that tightness.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I have one more, and I just thought of it right now. So this could be good or bad. We'll see what happens. We got 20 minutes left. We still got to answer an email. Here we go. The myth is you can't burn fat and add muscle at the same time.
Oh, another good one.
That's such a good one, right? Now, here's the thing though, is you got to break it down. And if you hear it and you look at it, it's such a technicality, right? Because no, you can't burn fat and add muscle at the exact same time. No, completely disagree. Can't do that.
I'll say technically, if you want to get metabolic process, that happened.
This is what I mean. I knew we were going to go so technical on this one, but go ahead.
We'll cover the technical aspect and let's get to the more generalized aspect where I think is if you're looking at a cellular level, your body's constantly burning fat for energy. And if you work out, it's going to be breaking down proteins and rebuilding. So technically, at the same time, your body's going through a process.
Oh, damn. Okay, because I was going to say technically, no, it can't, because at the exact, like your energy systems are just completely different. One's burning fats, and then one's trying to repair tissue and gain muscle, or excuse me, repair muscle tissue, which eventually makes you have more muscle mass. But I was going to say you can, however, in a workout, in a week, be burning and losing specific fats and be adding skeletal muscle mass or lean body mass.
And that's where I think a lot of people are like, oh, you can't do a fat loss workout and a muscle workout at the same time. That's where I think myth comes from.
Okay. Yeah. And I disagree. I mean, that's what like CrossFit is about. CrossFit is literally about, can you do 100 burpees and then 50 deadlifts?
And even we would do our tempo lifts.
I would disagree
and still
again.
Put in some sort of metabolic demand. and the results both ways. I don't think people can say, hey, I'm going to go do cardio, I'm going to do weight training. What one do I get more of? Am I going to burn fat more, or am I going to gain muscle more? And that just comes down to, hormones and diet and all that stuff. But make a workout program routine that puts metabolic work in, cardiovascular work
Yeah,
in,
exactly.
and weight training in 5 to 6 days. You'll see results.
So I think the reason why people don't do that is because they're not really well educated to grasp how to do that appropriately. Because most people that I see that want to lose weight, 9 times out of 10, they've just been tracking progress with a scale at home. And I actually have a client who had just started working with a couple months ago, and we retest every week. And in our first couple weeks, his total weight pretty much stayed the same. Like from first weigh in to second weigh in, it stayed exactly the same. But he lost 3 pounds of fat, added a pound and a half of muscle, and then he had like another pound and a half of water extra water on him. And then like it kept kind of doing that. It kept like the total weight only adjusted by like half a pound, maybe a pound at most, but he would lose like 5-6 pounds of pure fat and be adding more skeletal muscle mass and having more lean body mass on his body because his body's now putting glycogen into the muscle versus just converting every energy it has as fat. So yeah, we are literally doing that. We are burning fat and adding muscle at the same time. And it's so funny because I really thought that this myth was true on the cellular level.
In some way you can say, is cardiovascular exercise the best way to lose fat? You could say yes, you could say no. I would say cardiovascular mobilizes fat the best, mean that you lose the fat. And that's what I kind of tell people is over a while, your body's going to get incredibly adapted to cardio, and then you have to change the stimulus somehow. And I think it all boils down to at the end is a routine that is focused on, if you're a beginner and looking to lose weight and gain muscle, is have a generic program for 5 days a week that focus on gaining muscle, building muscle, and cardiovascular focus and losing weight.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't think there's anything more you could add to that. That's honestly perfect. But yeah, like kind of just being repetitive. The cardio isn't the best way to do it. And back to what I said earlier, just you are weakening your metabolism when you just try to lose weight through cardio because your metabolism's working at a certain rate, and then it starts to see that you're losing more weight, so it sees that it can relax a little bit more. But when you, like you said, you hit the nail on the head about what you should be doing instead. All right, cool. That
Let's hit those
covers all our
questions.
myths that we had to go through today. I don't have anything. Oh, I did have one more, but we'll have to save it for another time because we got 15 minutes left, and I really want to get into Will's email. All right. And for our news listeners, if you're trying to send in an email, it's thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com. We will be glad to answer any and all questions. We'll read the questions live recorded on the air and answer them in depth. And like I always say, if there's more information you want to have, or we could provide you some resources, feel free to follow up with another email and we can send you guys some resources. But so here we go. Will wrote in and he was talking about himself hitting a PR on the deadlift. Congrats, Will, hitting 405. And the question was about calluses. How do you prevent them from tearing? What do you do once they tear? And if you have any other recommendations and any other thoughts about chalk when you are using a lift. So why don't you go ahead and answer that, Michi?
So for calluses, definitely chalk up. I like to use a lot of chalk. For me, I think it's just at first getting used to the bar and the gnarling on the bar kind of rips apart your hands. The more stimulus you get to that, the tougher your calluses are going to be. So that's a lot of people come in and be like, oh, I'm going to deadlift for, say 4 weeks and then take a break from it and not touch a groove bar or anything like that. At first, yeah, they're going to tear open. They're going to bleed. They're going to suck. Duct tape them, for glue. I used to kind of do whatever I could to get through the lift, and then I'll take care of them at home, let them heal up. but over time they're just going to get tougher. I mean, I got pretty thick calluses on my hands right
Duct
now,
tape.
and that's from every day touching a bar, dumbbell, some kind of grip that gives them that roughness. You'll adapt, but PRs, lots of chalk. Get those hands really chalk, get a good grip, so it doesn't feel like the skin is in contact with that bar.
Yeah, I hate calluses. They're so annoying. It's like the first thing I'm in contact with my weight, and it's the first thing that's stimulating my mind to be like, oh shit, this sucks. So Will, I feel you, man. What I try to do is I actually use the knurling on the bar to kind of grind down my calluses. You can also get like a volcanic rock, like almost like an emery board. I forget what the exact term is for it, but I have one actually in my shower. So when my hands get all wet, I just kind of take the rock and God, I wish I could think of the name off the top of my head. Do you know you remember what they're called?
Is it a pumice stone?
Pumice stone. Yes, exactly. So Pumice. I like the pumice volcanic rocks because they have lots of grooves in them. And like I said, like once I'm in the shower, my hands are all moist, just kind of grab that thing and take off the beginning of the callus. Because the worst part is once that callus grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, and then it's pinching all that fresh skin underneath. It's just a painful process. So yeah, chalk up whenever you need to, and just get a nice good squeeze on that bar. It's going to really help prevent any movement that is going to cause more calluses. So just grab the hell out of that bar for your PR for any lift, and that will help a little bit. Obviously, as you're moving through the lift, your grip strength starts to weaken and open up a little bit, and that's when you're going to start to feel those calluses a little bit more. But hey, PR is only for a 1 rep max or 2 or 3, so should be fine. I have heard of people using super glue when they are really bad, like if it opens up and you can see fresh red skin underneath, and it's going to be so sensitive if you just rip that callus off. Yeah, I've had friends who just super glue that back down just so they can continue to lift without it being a sensitive area at that point. The next part of that question was he was asking about when should you use a weight belt. And I have a personal answer to this, but Menchie, if you want to go ahead and take this.
Gotcha. So for the weight belts, I like to tell people if you are going for a true 1 rep max, and this max is like really to the top of your ability, throw it on. Other than that, I tell people you really shouldn't be training with a weight belt on because it's going to give you a false sense of stability through your core and through the basically it stabilizes your spine in a way that your abs, I shouldn't say can't, but to your ability you can't stabilize that. So there's as soon as you take that belt off and you can't hit a number that you crush with the belt, then you got to look back and check, okay, do I really have strength, or is this kind of giving me a false sense of stability that's giving me strength?
Right. I think that's exactly what my answer is, but for a little bit of a different reason. I feel like it gives people a false sense of pressurization and holds their abdominals so tight that they now can push against that. And when you're in um, whatever lift it is, you want to create pressure with your abdominals and that abdominal flooring. So your foot placement is huge and proprioception is huge. So any mobility issues going on in your hips can greatly affect this. But your connection to the floor through your adductors connects to your abdominal flooring, and you use air to create pressure in your abdominal flooring, and you create this cylinder so that when you have weight, on your back coming down for a squat, now that vector where your glutes are and your hips are stays strong. If you lose that pressurization, right, you exhale or you just let go of your core, now you've probably turned off your hamstrings, probably turned on your lower back, and probably are stressing out your quads and hip flexors. So I think the weight belt is a great tool for learning about pressurization and stability through your core. but you should practice just using a big breath. Big breath in, hold that core tight, come down, come up, exhale as you come up. If there's numbers that you can hit with the belt on that you can't hit with the belt, I would break that down a little further. Maybe drop it down like 85% of that weight and start practicing getting that pressurization through your core. And dead bugs are the best ab exercise. And I will argue this till I die, but I think it's the best ab exercise because it teaches you to disassociate your diaphragm from your abdominals, because you want to be able to squeeze everything down there, but you want to also be able to breathe through that. And a lot of people can't do that. They squeeze, and at the moment they have to breathe, they breathe, but they lose their core. So that's why I would say I would be against the belt. I would use it as a learning tool, but the end goal is to be without the belt. The only time I'd recommend the belt is if you're like the Mountain from Game of Thrones, Hafborn Bajorson. I know I butchered that name, but he's a animal. And these people who lift like heavy loads all the time, preparing for like the world's strongest man competitions, they always wear these weight belts. And I just think it has to do with about preservation of their lower back and preventing them from feeling sore or being detrimental to their training day over day and week over week.
Yeah, and you just hit it right there, and kind of in depth of how it stabilizes the spine is when you get a belt on, it helps bring your spine into, I'm going to say it, into a bit of flexion, so there's not as lot of stress on your disc. And yeah, I know I said it flexes the spine a little bit. I'm not talking about complete flexion, but when you watch these big power lifters deadlift, they get a little flexion of the spine because that is the spine's way of, not compromising discs,
contracts,
but taking pressure off them.
Okay.
So belts can be helpful, but I tell people do not rely on them, because then you go to do something without a belt and you're going to screw yourself up because your body does not realize what pressurization it is or is going to have, and then you have no core under you.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah. So I think, let's see, the last part of Will's email goes into discussing how he had 4 ACL tears. Jeez, man, that's brutal. But good for you for still pushing these numbers and squatting these numbers, man. That's impressive. Just keep pushing. Don't accept any injury. So he talks about, so what exercises through weight training or otherwise should I try and focus on to keep strength in my knee? And should I focus more on box squats versus free squats?
I'll answer this real quick because I know we're kind of running short on time here, but a lot of hamstring stuff, single leg hamstring, anything that really recruits that hamstring in a good position with the abs on. And for box squat versus regular, I would always go regular because you can keep tension of the hamstrings on at the bottom. Unless you can in a box squat, I'm all for it. But I tell people, go through full range of motion first without using, something under you to stop you and then drive through.
Yeah. Strengthen the hamstring. Unilateral work's going to be really important to do. I love doing banded work, just kind of just forcing yourself to have to fight for stability. And I do like box squats for certain applications. When it has to do with strengthening your knee, I would say free squats all the way. Box squats really aren't going to be beneficial in any manner for specifically strengthening your knee. However, if you've been, for whatever reason, you do something on the weekend and you kind of irritate your knee and you don't want to irritate it anymore, but you still want to get a lift in, and today's squats, there you go. Box squats is a great way to still get a workout in without putting too much stress on the joints. And I think that about answers it. So yeah, Will, I hope that answers all your questions. Thank you so much for writing in, and congratulations again on the PR. And if you feel like you want more information, feel free to follow up with another email, and we'll write you we'll write you an email response back. And like I said, next week we're going to be talking about motivation, a lot of good motivational quotes and sort of driving forces to get where you want to go. So you got a closing statement for us, Eric?
Don't listen to all the myths out there. Don't listen to the people that say you can't do this, you can't do that. There's a lot floating around. If you have a question of it, look it up. But most myths are just kind of based off of just ideas. But prove yourself wrong on the myths. Go out there, lift weights, eat healthy, do the right things, and that's all I got.
Well said. Well politically said. Now you're gonna make me seem pretty juvenile. But my quote that kind of came to mind going through this is just, if it's important to you, you'll make it happen. If not, there'll be an excuse waiting for you. Because I feel like a lot of these myths come out of excuses and come out of somebody really not wanting to work hard, and just don't take everything with a grain of salt. And it's never wrong to have a healthy amount of skepticism and get a second opinion. So that's all I got. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Motivation. Really excited about that episode. And that's the Think Fitness Life podcast.